Hello, welcome once again to the Reading Room Success Stories. And we are reading Gifted Hands, the Ben Carson story. And we're on chapters 4 and 5 today. Chapter 4 is entitled Racial Prejudice and a Spelling Bee. Ben and Curtis encountered racial injustice, but it wasn't as intense as what other Black kids faced around the country at that time. Sonia tried to shield her boys from it. For most of their lives, the boys lived in Black neighborhoods, attended Black schools, and worshiped in Black churches. But one day, Ben realized most of his white classmates considered it a disgrace to be Black. A student in Ben's fifth grade class, a white boy named John, had been given the honor of representing the entire school on a television science program broadcast into schools around the state. The entire fifth grade watched eagerly on the day their classmate was scheduled to appear. Ben sat next to a girl named Christine when the two got into a guessing game as to when John's turn would come. So when one segment of the show ended, in an attempt to be the first one to guess, Ben blurted out, "John will be next." When a Black student walked out on the set instead, some of the kids snickered. Christine leaned over and announced, "I should wring your neck," as if Ben had implied that John was colored. In that moment, Ben felt a terrible sinking, sick feeling in the pit of his stomach. Later that same year, Ben experienced another racist incident. One day after school, he was playing with some white children when an angry shout called the white children into the house. Ben began walking away when one of the kids sneaked back out, caught up with him, and said, "We can't play with you anymore because you're a Blackie," the child said. Ben recognized many people thought being Black was not a good thing. The last week of fifth grade, Ben's class held a spelling bee. Just as everyone expected, the winner was Bobby Farmer. But what really surprised Ben was the word that Bobby had to spell in order to win the bee: agriculture. He can spell that word, Ben thought. He had just read it the night before in one of his books. If I can spell that word, I can learn to spell better than Bobby Farmer. That day, Ben made up his mind to keep on reading until he was the smartest kid in his class, just like his mother said he could be. He read whatever and whenever he could. He read before school and after school. He read when he was in the bathroom. He read when he was waiting for the bus. He kept on reading until less than 2 years later, he had gone from the dumbest kid in the fifth grade to the top of the seventh grade class at Wilson Junior High School. The same students who had laughed at him on the playground back in the fifth grade now came to him and asked him for his assistance with their schoolwork. Ben liked that. He enjoyed having other students come to him for help. It made him proud to know that he had earned their respect. At the junior high school, like at Higgins Elementary, most of the students were white. There too, Ben encountered prejudice. Railroad tracks ran alongside the route that Ben and his brother took to Wilson Junior High School. For excitement, they hopped trains on their way to school. Curtis would toss his clarinet onto one flat car, then jump and catch the railing on the last car of the train. Curtis liked to catch the faster trains, then watch for the slower moving ones. Ben was smart. But both boys were placing themselves in great danger. Not only did they have to jump, catch the railing, and hold on, but they also had to watch out for railroad security men to stop people from hopping the trains. The security guards never caught Ben or Curtis, but one day when Ben was alone, he got caught by a group of bigger boys, all of them white. One was carrying a very large stick. The boy hit Ben across the shoulders with the stick, and all the others crowded around. Ben had nowhere to go. The boys yelled and called Ben ugly, racist names. Ben was small and skinny for his age. He knew he was no match for even one of these boys. No way could he defend himself against all of them, so he just stared at the ground. If we ever catch you again, we'll kill you, one boy yelled before letting Ben go. Ben ran all the way to school and never hopped a train again. Later that same year, Ben and Curtis went out for the football team. Neither Carson boy was big, but they were fast. Ben did well in practice until one day a young group of angry white men surrounded them as they were leaving the field. Ben and Curtis were frightened. Finally, one of the white men stepped forward and growled, "You two ever come back, we'll throw you in the river." That said, the white men turned and walked away. As the boys hurried home, Ben said to his brother, "Who wants to play football if your own team is against you?" Curtis agreed. "I think we can find better things to do with our time." The boys never found out if the young men would have actually hurt them because they never went back to football practice. But it was hard to understand why no one associated with that football team, none of the other players, their parents, or even the coaches ever asked them why. Perhaps Ben's worst encounter with racial prejudice took place during a school assembly. A teacher called Ben to the front of the auditorium to receive the award for the highest academic achievement in his grade. After handing him the award, she turned back to the microphone and tried to shame the white students for letting a black student beat them. "You're not trying hard enough," she told them. Her message was clear. She thought white kids were smarter than African American kids and that no black student should have been number one. Several of Ben's white friends looked at him and rolled their eyes as if to say, "Isn't she ridiculous?" Ben was angry, but he didn't show it. He wondered what was wrong with her. He had been in her class. She knew how hard he had worked and how smart he was. He knew he had earned this award. By ninth grade, racism was no longer came as a shock to Ben, though it still hurt and infuriated him. The last day of his first term in high school, Ben had to carry his report card around from class to class so that each teacher could fill in his grade for that subject. Ben had straight A's in everything going into the last period of the day, physical education. His gym teacher, who was white, looked over all his grades, then glanced up at Ben. Ben had earned an A in his class, but the teacher wrote in a B and looked up and grinned. That PE teacher knew he had ruined Ben's chance to make the straight A honor roll. He also knew there was nothing Ben could do about it. Ben never told his mother what his PE teacher had done. He never told her about the kids by the train tracks or what the teacher had said at the honors assembly. And neither he nor Curtis ever told her the real reason they quit playing football. They didn't want their mother to worry about them. Chapter 5. A change and not for the better. Halfway through Ben's 8th grade year, the Carsons moved back into their old house on Deacon Street. His mother had finally reached the goal she had set years before. The house was small, but it felt like home. For the entire Carson family, it was a huge dream come true. But it meant Ben changed schools once again. Leaving his friends at Wilson Junior High, he became the new kid at Hunter Junior High School. Ben was still one of the brightest kids in his class. But unlike the kids at Wilson, his new classmates didn't seem to care who was smart. They cared about who dressed smart. And the end look was expensive. Italian knit shirts, silk pants, alligator shoes, and stingy brim hats. Ben's mother had no money for such things. At Wilson, the other students had respected Ben because of his intelligence. To be respected at Hunter, you had to dress right, play basketball, and learn how to cap people. Capping meant you said something funny but critical to get the better of someone. His first few weeks at Hunter Junior High, Ben served as a favorite target for the other boys to cap on. He was new and his clothing was definitely not in. Know what the Indians did with General Custer's worn out clothes? One boy exclaimed. Tell us, another one exclaimed. They saved them for our man Carson here. Sure looks like it, a third boy chimed in. Get close enough and you'll believe it, 'cause they smell like they're 100 years old. The first boy finished off the capping. For several weeks, Ben took this abuse quietly. He didn't know what to do to make friends with his new classmates. What's wrong with me, Ben wondered. Why do I have to be different? Then he decided the best way to survive capping was to become the best capper. Ben thought, you want to cap? I'll show you how to cap. The next day, Ben was ready when a ninth grader started in. Man, that shirt you're wearing has been through World War I, World War II, World War III, and World War IV. Yeah, Ben answered, and your mama wore it. The students standing around all laughed. Even the boy who started the capping. They slapped Ben on the back and said, hey, that's okay. It didn't take long for the crowd to direct their attention elsewhere. They quickly learned that if they started capping on this new kid, he always had a response to top their remarks. Ben was thankful for some relief, but he still didn't fit in at his new school. The kids at Hunter seemed to think that if you were poor, you were worthless. And Ben knew his family was still poor, even though they were back in their own home. From time to time, Ben's family received food stamps from the government. Without that help, Ben's mother would not have been able to pay the other bills. But Ben didn't want anyone to know his family used food stamps. So when he went to the grocery store to buy milk or bread, he would carefully watch the checkout area to be sure no one from school was around to see him. If someone he recognized walked in while he was standing in line, he would pretend he'd forgotten something and walk back to the back of the store until the coast was clear. Every time he left his house with the food stamps in his pocket, he worried that someone would see him use them and they would know that he was poor. By the start of the 10th grade, Ben thought his clothing were his biggest handicap in life. More than anything, he wanted to dress like the in group at school. He argued with his mother about it. Benny, his mother said, what you wear doesn't make any difference. But everyone will laugh at me, Ben responded. Only stupid people laugh at someone because of their clothes, his mother answered. Just because someone dresses better than you doesn't make them better than you. Almost every day, Ben begged his mother for new clothes. Ben knew he was disappointing his mother with his attitude, but he desperately wanted to be part of the in crowd. Instead of coming home from school and doing his homework, Ben started staying on the playground, shooting hoops, and hanging out with the other guys. Soon his grades slipped from A's to B's, then to C's. Even though he became one of the gang with his poor grades, the popular crowd still didn't accept him. Ben wanted to be cool, so he begged his mother to buy him an Italian knit shirt, if nothing else. Sonia Carson let him know how disappointed she was to hear what he was saying. After all, she thought she'd raised him to be different, not the kind of person who always has to do the same thing everyone else is doing. She told him he was too smart to fall for the latest fad and follow people who weren't using their brains. But Ben told her all he was asking for, all it would take to make him happy, was one Italian knit shirt. That's when his mother made him a deal. Okay, I'll bring home all the money I make next week and turn it over to you. You'll be in charge of all the family finances. You can buy all the groceries, pay the bills, and take care of all the necessities. Whatever you have left over at the end of the week is yours. You can spend it on that Italian knit shirt or whatever else you want. This is going to be great, Ben thought. He bought the groceries and then began going through the other bills. But he ran out of money long before everything had been paid. He suddenly realized that his mother, with her third-grade education, had to be some kind of genius just to keep food on the table and any kind of clothes on his back. He'd been complaining and asking her to buy him a $75 shirt when she brought home only $100 a week, working her fingers to the bone, scrubbing other people's floors and cleaning other people's toilets. How could I have been so selfish, she thought. Ben started studying again and his grades went back up to A's. Some of the classmates laughed and called him nerd and Poindexter, but he was determined not to let that bother him anymore. Besides, he could always shut up his teachers and tormentors by saying one thing: let's see what I'm doing in 20 years and let's see what you're doing in 20 years. Ben not only had a dream, he had a plan for getting there, and the people around him knew it. Only one major problem stood in the way of reaching his dream. And we will continue next time.